Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Woman of Inspiration Awards, and this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who are leading, inspiring, and motivating others to greatness. These are women that ignore the naysayers and inspire others to dream big. So here today, a very special guest, Jennifer Ménard-Shand, who is the founder and CEO, also the director of the client happiness for Staff Shop. And so, Jennifer, it is such a treat to have you here today. You're also a 100 Women of Inspiration book contributor. Of course, book coming out in September. So I'm excited to talk to you today. You have an incredible story. You're such a leader and you're really blazing trails in this industry. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Monica. Great to be here.
So I am always asked, women of inspiration, people look up to women of inspiration. They're like, she's so inspiring. And so what I find is that there's an onion, that there's layers and layers and layers to that leader. And that road for women like yourself hasn't all been a smooth road. So Jennifer, I know a little bit about your story here. And so I would love for you to share with our listeners today, the woman that you are today. How did you get to this point? Where did it start?
All right. Well, if I go back to the beginning, it started 4 hours north of here. I live in Toronto, and so I grew up in Sudbury, but in a smaller town, Northern Ontario, called Chelmsford. My childhood was awesome. My parents were great, but they divorced when I was 7. And I remember that day being probably one of the worst days of my life. I remember it vividly. And I think that's when my wanting to solve problems or fix or help people started, because I remember thinking to myself, there's got to be something I can do about this situation. And long story short, my mother ended up getting full custody of me. I only saw my dad every second weekend. And although my dad is amazing, I mean, his name's Noel. He was born on Christmas Day. He's the happiest man in the world. He's so great in so many ways. My mother, unfortunately, kind of wandered down some dark paths and ended up being with a few different partners that weren't so great. And one in the end that ended up being my stepfather, who abused her physically, mentally, emotionally. And so I ended up spending the majority of my teens in a pretty volatile, toxic environment. There was a lot of domestic violence, a lot of chaos. And so I ended up wandering down dark paths myself because of that. And so, so I've recorded a couple of podcasts actually with Tony Chapman where you can kind of get parts of the story or the full story. But I would say that I always somehow knew that if I worked really hard and I just made sure that I had good grades, which was actually also expected of me, and surrounded myself with the right people, that I would somehow make it out of this. Through the teens, I mean, I spent my life back then trying to quote unquote save my mother. I would either jump into their fights, or I would be asked to moderate their fights, or I would have to run to the next door neighbor to call the police, or end up in court having to change the story if my mom had taken him back again. And so
Jennifer, as a 15-year-old, now you are, a mediator with your family, or were you even younger when you were brought into that role?
Yeah, I would say it started when I was 11 and went on until about 18 when I moved out of the house.
So, did you know that how did you, what a really, my heart breaks, right? Hearing these stories, Jennifer, and I can only imagine how it felt as a young woman growing up in that environment, and for witnessing the tragedy that you did. What could you get help at that point? Did you feel that you could get help at that point, or did you feel that you couldn't get help?
Yeah, so where I was going with that story is I ended up, because I grew up in that type of environment, I ended up wandering down several dark paths myself, and my relationship with my mother ended up changing because, no, not really. I didn't feel like I could get help. I was actually embarrassed and ashamed. I didn't really want to talk to anyone about what was going on, not even my father. It's bizarre to think about it now, but to me, he was such a great light and almost perfect dad in my life. I just didn't even want to bring that kind of drama or shadow to the time that we spent together, which was only twice a month. So the relationship with my mother changing from, or the roles being reversed from parent to child to parent, I felt like she was my child for a while. And her, I guess, choosing him over me is what had me lose a lot of respect and love for her and had me kind of rebel. And so I did things that maybe any typical teenager would do, but hung around with the wrong people, did drugs, alcohol, petty crime, witchcraft, even just wild things that thank God I was able to sort some of that stuff out later on. But the one thing that I really always hung on to was working very hard and just having those good grades, because I knew that would be my ticket to freedom and my ticket out someday. You feel trapped in those types of situations and you feel at the mercy of, your parent who's looking after you. So anyway, so this went on for years, and eventually I ended up moving in with my father, though, for a majority of the time that I was a teenager. And because you can do that after a certain age, even if a parent has full custody of you. I think it's at 13 or so, you can say, no, I want to go live with the other parent. And so I did that for a little while, and I didn't talk to my mother for a few years until 9/11, out of all days. That's the one day that my dad called me and said, Jen, you have to come home. Something's happened. Your mom got into a car accident. And from what I understood, I thought she passed away, but it was actually my grandmother who passed away. And I didn't find out until I got to the hospital. And so I remember praying to God that day because I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope that it's not her, and I'm sorry, and I will talk to her, and I will try to, make amends and fix the situation once again. And so I was super grateful when I got to the hospital and found out that it was my grandmother instead of my mom. It was still bad, but not as bad. And so I felt bad from that moment and ended up moving back in with her temporarily. And one of the conditions I had was no alcohol, no fights. And unfortunately that didn't happen. So I left the house at 18 years old, probably at 2 a.m. She had kicked me out of the house, probably because I didn't want to help her deal with another episode with my stepfather. And I packed my car at 2 a.m. to the point where I couldn't see anything other than my rear view mirror and the mirror on my side. And I ended up getting my own place and was on my own since then. And then I had done what I could do up in Sudbury. I had a lot of great friends, great family, great connections aside from that, but I felt as though there was something else. And I always loved Toronto. I had visited the city with one of my friends and just felt like I really belonged here. And there was a pull, really, some sort of gravitation towards this city from a very young age. And so I moved here when I was 20, and I continued down the path of working very hard and surrounding myself with the right people, and landed a job with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that's where I actually met my mentor, whom I called my Yoda, Jeff Bagg. He owned a staffing firm called the Bagg Group, and had been around since 1971. And I remember him being a recovery table in the club that I worked at MLSE. And my boss at the time came to me and said, Jen, this club member is so upset. You've got to find a way to fix this situation and turn it around. And somebody kind of messed up his order or what he was looking for the last time he was in. And so I went over there and I guess made some sort of impression, because he offered me a job and said, did you ever think about working in staffing? And coming from Sudbury, 4 hours north of here, I had no idea what a staffing firm even was. I had to Google it. If we find our own jobs up north, so I didn't even know what this was for and why a company like this would even exist. And so I actually blew him off for a year because although I had been working in hospitality to support myself, I was in dental school. I wanted to be a dentist at one point. It was something my mother had suggested. She said, you can make just as much money as a doctor with less responsibility and weekends off, so you should be a dentist. And I was like, okay. So I ended up in university, 2 years into biochemistry. I'm there with a lab coat and glasses going, this is a huge mistake. Like, I can't talk to people. This is awful. But I had still taken a dental assisting course and I graduated with honors. And I did actually go work in a dental office for about 3 months until I really realized, like, okay, I definitely can't work in this field. And I remember Jeff, my mentor, kind of looking at me funny when I said I was in dental school. He was like, okay, let me know how that goes. We'll keep in touch. And so, of course, a year later, I was talking to my brother at the time. He's like, Jen, he's like, what about that Jeff guy that you met and that opportunity? Because we had realized that, this wasn't the career I wanted. And I remember thinking, oh man, I totally blew him off. I lost his business card. I'd have to wait till he comes back into the club. Who knows? And sure enough, fate had it. The next day he walked into the club and I go back to him with my tail between my legs. I'm like, Jeff, I lost your business card. I will go for that lunch now. Can we chat? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And we exchanged life stories and goals. And he really listened to my story and my vision board. And he's like, I think I can help you get there. So try it out. If you don't like it, it's all good. But I really think that you have something here and the skills that are required. So little did I know, staffing was so similar to hospitality and my skill. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still very much about people. Our product is people. It's about making those connections. It's about helping them. It's about lifting them up and connecting them to the right situations and helping them put food on the table, and the list goes on. So I started off as a recruiter and did very well, and then moved into sales, did even better. And then I created my own division within the company. I was there for about 10 years. I held various different positions. And because I always had a heart for hospitality, I had brought in some of those clients by default. And so Jeff said one day, I had reached a plateau, or I was like, okay, what else am I going to do here? He's like, well, maybe you can start this division that we don't have. It's the one area that we're not tapped into. So I did. And that was called Bag at Your Service at the time. That was probably started getting clients around 2011, but really officially launched the line probably in 2014-ish, and started staffing large events. And it was super fun. And at the same time, I was still actually overseeing other areas of the bag group for him. But at the end of 2018, he gave me the opportunity to purchase the division that I had created because he was selling the company. And I didn't know it at the time, but I came back from vacation middle of November, and he made me sign an NDA, which he had never done before, to talk to him, and said, I can't tell you all the details, but I can tell you that if you've kind of expressed an interest to purchase your line one day, and I think I found you that window, but you need to make it happen by the end of December. So that was 45 days minus 2 weeks vacation because people are away Christmas and New Year's. And I was a little ticked at the time because I was always up for a great challenge, but I almost felt like this was setting me up to fail. And so I was asking so many questions and he could only answer a quarter of them. I asked to talk to my key business partner now, or player on the team back then. He wouldn't allow me to talk to her as well. He's like, no, focus on trying to make the deal happen. If you can make the deal happen, we'll kind of be able to release some information from there. So as you can imagine, I called every business coach I had. I would say half of them said, do not do this. You don't have enough information. What is going on? This is wild. And the other half were like, yeah, go for it. We'll be there for you in terms of guidance. And so long story short, at the 11th hour, so I would say probably within 30 days, and ended up securing the financing, ended up being able to talk to my team eventually and get them on board. Thank God they wanted to follow, and we were set to kind of fly out of the bag nest overnight, almost, with needing a new name, a new website, new systems, processes, everything. Like everything was cut off. And so
exciting.
Very exciting, but being the type of person I am, I have always wanted to spend months, let's say, on my website, or months trying to pick a name, not 30 days with a list of other things to do. So anyway, it all worked out. But I mentioned Jeff because he's a key player in the story. And I just always like to reinforce the importance of mentors and people like him that cleared the path and believed in me sometimes more than I believed in myself. And so I'm very grateful for that, because now I can be that person for other people. And little did I know at the time, but about a year before I left BAG, my business partner now, Allison Hernandez, she came to Jeff and I kind of looking for a new career opportunity. She didn't have experience in staffing. We didn't really know where this was going, but Jeff had said, hey, Jen, there's someone that I want you to meet, and she might be able to run the operational side of the business. And I said, sure. So I remember meeting with her and being very impressed, very smart, very logical, calm, level-headed person, and definitely a powerhouse, and had a lot of experience with companies like Starbucks and retailers. And so I thought to myself, yeah, this could work. She seems great. But let's see if she actually loves this business, because this business can be a little wild. And so we had the opportunity to work together for a year before I had the chance to buy the business. And so she really is the one that I like to call the Roy Disney to my operation. Jeff used to say to me, Jen, you're like the Walt Disney of this operation. You need to find your Roy. And although I searched for Roy for many years, Roys don't come around very often. And again, that was a huge blessing for her to come into my life prior to buying the business. And so she's my business partner today. And we continue to kind of build our Disney crew or cast or set of A players. But it stems from that, that personal story of mine, and then the connection to Jeff, and then the connection to her. And so 2019 started, I was officially on my own, and then started expanding across Canada, started doing very well. And as you know, in March 2020, the pandemic closed the curtain pretty hard on our niche. So I panicked for about 5 minutes and then was like, okay, no, just maybe this is a sign to step back and finally work on the business as opposed to in it. I remember Jeff always saying, Jen, you got to work on the business, not in the business. When I started the business, I was everything. I was the sales, the operations, the administrator, you name it, I was doing it. And it's not until you find either that partner or that team that can support you, can you really actually grow. And so that's what the pandemic did for me. It was actually a blessing, because we just decided, let's go back to our roots and where we came from, which is a full service staffing firm. There's no reason why we can't be a full service firm plus add additional resources, because, I had chosen hospitality because it's my heart, but we have the infrastructure, the processes, the systems, the resources to do anything. So super excited. We grew from 4 service lines to 8. We are now in all 10 Canadian provinces. We have 2 other, so yeah, we've got a couple clients in the US and the Caribbean that I'm looking to expand. And I definitely have my eyes set on global expansion on the flagship event side of things. I still want to go back to that when this is over.
And we're going to have lots of conversations there, because of course our expansion's North America and global. So yes, these are great relationships, Jen, and you go for it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so, yeah, so that's all great. Now that's one quick thing to mention about all this, though, is that, everything looked great on the outside and success and all this. I was a bit of a workaholic as well. I had obviously put my career first because at first, if you roll back to 18, 20 years old, I was driven by fear mostly. It was survival. It was do whatever you need to do to survive. And so I had built this materialistic type lifestyle, and I drove the fancy car, 6-figure salary, huge wardrobe, can't close the door to my closets, events, parties, all kinds of things. And I remember looking at my vision board when I was 30 and realized that it was just lacking a lot of purpose. And I hadn't thought past the materialistic things. So anything I had ever put on my vision board had come to life, which is great. And that's the power of vision boards. But what was on there was like, the white convertible BMW. It was, you need to make X amount of dollars. You need to travel here, there, and okay, but what else, right? So that was another kind of eye-opening exercise. And the part that I'd like to talk about as well is the personal side, because although I had a lot of success on the professional side, my personal life was not well taken care of. I didn't really put the effort I should have in certain relationships because I was putting work first. And I obviously had to deal with a lot of trauma still from the things that I had gone through. And thankfully, I did have quite a few great therapists along the way. And I ended up discovering that EMDR therapy actually is probably one of the best therapies, as opposed to talking therapy. That for me personally, if I go and talk to someone for an hour, that's great. I'll feel awesome when I leave. But the EMDR specifically deals with post-traumatic stress and actually almost kind of resets and rewires your mind. So that therapy is worth mentioning because it's something that really, really helped. It's not until I reconnected, though, with my Christian faith that I really start healing from the inside out. I would only get so far with mentors and resources and therapy and hard work and even good friends and people and relationships in my life. And so I remember going back. I grew up Catholic, but I'm Christian, and I went to one of my friend's churches probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's called C3. And there was something specific about this church. I remember going there and just bawling my eyes out every Sunday. There was something so special about it, just filled with the Holy Spirit and all kinds of things. And really leaning into that is what helped me heal and become more vulnerable, have more humility, be able to actually fully trust again myself and other people. And I always say now that God has the power to heal faster than decades of therapy. And so once I went back to church, I have to say that's when I really started skyrocketing in a lot of different ways. I met my husband. As you know, we were chatting earlier, pregnant with my first child, due September 25th. These are things like marriage and kids. These are things that I was extremely afraid of. I mean, I had seen so many examples of failure that I thought to myself, there's just like, this can't be worth it. There's no way, like, how is this going to work? I mean, the divorce rate itself is 50+%. I would hear stories from all kinds of people and so much negativity. And anyway, so those were 2 huge steps for me. I'm 36. I'll be 37 in September. And my story.
What do you do? When's the baby?
So my birthday's September 17th and the baby's due September 25th. So fun.
So September is going to be a huge month for you.
Definitely. Yeah, huge month for sure.
And congratulations. You're glowing, by the way. When we had our chat in the green room, you're glowing. And I said, so how's this little being that's inside of you growing? Like, what a cool journey. And so thank you for sharing that. You're such a great spot in your life to welcome a family. So I'm going to let you just drive through because you're doing you're leading the podcast so awesomely. You're sharing so many great pieces. I'm sure that our listeners are making notes, and you're so relatable, so authentic, Jennifer. So thank you so much for, sharing some really hard stuff that's not easy to share. So I'll let you continue on about sort of the journey and what motivates you and finding your faith and your purpose, I think is where we left off.
Mm-hmm. So what's great about this now is that I like to say that I serve outwards and upwards. I was very self-serving for the longest time. It was about me, and surviving and work hard and become successful. And now I use Staff Shop as a platform to help other people. And that's really what it's about. It's no longer about me being the star of the show. I don't really care about that, although you might see my face everywhere because I'm the CEO, but I really lean into my team, and I want to make sure that they're okay, and that I'm giving back as much as possible using the gifts that we've all been given. I mean, we all have gifts, and it's super important to my business partner and I that we place people in the right roles in positions that are naturally going to fuel or feed their core value energies. We've got a really special internal core value assessment and all kinds of things that we do internally, just to connect people with either us directly internally long-term, or even if it's for short-term, that's fine if we're a stepping stone to someone's career, or with our clients. But it's really about, using this platform to do even stuff like this and storytell, because I believe that storytelling heals. And most recently, although I still am very, very involved in the business, I've been asked to speak a lot more. And I really feel like that's maybe a calling. You go through all these things, you might as well share it to try and help people. Otherwise, what's the point of going through it, right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's what the beauty is, women seen, heard, valued, is your voice is so powerful. Your lived experience is pure gold to somebody else, so they can go through something without the judgment, without the shame, or just completely avoid that experience entirely. So thank you for being so brave and courageous to share that story, and inspirational. So Woman of Inspiration, you've been nominated as well for Woman of Inspiration this year. So once again, congratulations on that. And for those that are listening, Jennifer, they're like, I get it. I see. The resilience muscles are like popping out of your jacket.
Many people say that.
And so I've got to ask you something. We just went through COVID, Jennifer. And so your lived experience and the resilience that you've built up, do you feel that has almost enabled you to really take on this COVID experience with more ease and grace because of that built resilience?
For sure. And that's the lesson in everything in life, is just, even if things are bad, it's never a waste. You're going to learn something from it. And I'm actually super grateful. I wouldn't change anything about what happened, because yes, I love change. I love big problems. I love fixing or getting into very big challenges and making a difference. And I guess that's where my courage comes from. I was very much used to life or death situations. And so for me, this is like Disneyland today. I don't get, not afraid, or I don't get stressed very easily, because anything with regards to business or something like a pandemic is nowhere near the tough times or the heartache that I went through as a child. So that is one positive of going through such chaos at a young age.
You're fearless.
Yes, my business partner and my team like to say that, or fearless leader. I guess I am.
And so those listeners are truly inspired by your story and your strength and your courage. I would like to ask you, as we sort of wrap up this podcast, because I could actually have talked to you all day. You're so inspiring, and you've done so much, and your energy is fantastic. Chief Happiness Officer. you're like, for those that are listening to the podcast, Jennifer's like got this amazing smile, and you're glowing. Of course, you're expecting soon, but you've got this great energy, and are there any self-care tips that you can share with our listeners or viewers that can help those women? Because everybody aspires and looks to the leaders like, she is driving that and she's on the road. What are her secrets? What are your self-care secrets that keep you inspired day after day, getting up out of bed, just bringing on life?
Good question. I learned a lot of them actually from some of the greats out there, some of the life hackers like Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins, and a lot of really Oprah even, of course. But I really like to look at people that are super successful and see what they do. The millionaire morning habits or billionaire morning habits and things like that. But I would say for me, it's really about waking up and either praying or meditating and just being grateful. First off, we're not promised tomorrow. And so you really just got to spend your time wisely. I read this stat the other day. It was kind of scary. I think we're on this earth for only approximately 30,000 days or so on average. And so how are you going to spend your time? Kind of just reframing that. I like, though, to go for runs or walks and listen to music. I really enjoy traveling. And although I'm extremely busy and my phone like never, ever shuts off, I do take the time to do the things that I love. I love food. I love wine. I love visiting new places and meeting new people. I love spas. I do take this time to actually recharge my batteries. And I'm very strict about that. And it doesn't matter what's going on. Like, for example, I have to eat. And I would tell my team that sometimes I see them working through lunch. And I'm like, okay, if you want to work through lunch, that's good. Maybe because they've seen me work through lunch once in a while. But there are certain things that I just don't sacrifice. And that's just, the exercise, the eating well, and really taking that time to recharge. But I think being grateful is probably one of the most important things. If you focus on gratitude and what the positives are in life, every day, it's kind of hard to get stuck or wallow in dark thoughts for very long. So, yeah.
Beautiful answer to that. And that leads me into my next one for you. Of course, this is an inspiring female yourself. What sort of qualities do you sort of inspire you by other leaders? Female leaders.
Female leaders specifically.
Yeah.
I guess, resilient, courageous women, women who are not afraid to be who they are and just know their worth. Have a good heart to be good to people. Use your gifts and your powers for good, not evil. We're all given gifts, like I mentioned, and really be dedicated to helping and serving other people and building other women up. I really admire those types of women that there's never any kind of, jealousy or unhealthy competition. We're a lot stronger together as opposed to fighting against each other. And unfortunately, I still see some of that. And so hopefully we can stand united more and more as time goes on. But that's that type of woman is who I admire.
I mean, and so that sounds like the woman of inspiration. That would be like a woman of inspiration question as well. Would I be safe to say that would be your definition of a woman of inspiration is
yes,
leader?
For sure.
And so, as you know, I'm a very big supporter about and advocate about women. Also, really recognizing our support networks and those players. So how important is it for a woman to have the support hers around her in the networks to support her?
I can't tell you how important that is. I mean, it's no one makes it alone. And I like to say sometimes it takes a village. Like, those two sayings are so true. It took a village to raise me and to get me to where I am. And no one makes it alone resonates with me quite a bit because, as I had mentioned, I tried to do everything myself in the beginning, and that got me to a certain level, but only so far. And it just doesn't make you feel very good when it's self-serving. So being part of many organizations and connecting with groups like this is absolutely essential to success. And it's not even just about our success, because we've had a lot of success connecting with the right organizations and the right people, especially women in business, but it's just doing the right thing, because everyone needs a helping hand once in a while, and I was once there. And if there's anything I can do to help other people, I'd be happy to do that. So it's key.
Very well said again. And I am excited to have you answer this question for me, is why is it so important for us to recognize the achievements of women?
I really think that women have been, I guess, suppressed in a lot of ways. And I have my own Indigenous women type story, which there was even more suppression there. And so you see it a lot these days. I think this is why diversity and inclusion and equality and power and privilege and all these topics are so important. Women have come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. And so we've got to keep fighting for the people that fought for us before. And yeah, that's why I think it's important.
So to any woman listening or watching today, your advice to them would be, they get nominated, and, they're like, ooh, I don't want to draw any light to me. What would you say to them, Jennifer? Because this is a big topic. It's, owning your worth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge topic, and it's a sad one. I actually had to get personal coaching on that years ago. And it was this great coach named Christina Samet, who actually taught me how to, number one, negotiate my worth. First of all, realize what it is, then negotiate it. But it's almost like starting a business as well. It's like, get clear on why you're starting a business, or why you are who you are, what you're going to do with these gifts that you've been given. What's different about you? What can you do to give back? And, these things are just fundamental to contributing and to fulfillment and purpose. I think it's not until you really connect to the purpose and meaning behind what you were designed to be here for, are you really going to be happy and fulfilled long term. So.
And I couldn't agree more, but I find that that's one of the questions that I always get. And once everybody takes the leap and the journey begins, it's like, why was I stressing about that? Because it helps when you share the stories. It helps when you share your leaderships. All ships rise. And yes, together we are stronger. I am a firm believer that it's collaboration over competition. Right? It's so important. And as we wrap up, it wouldn't be a Woman of Inspiration podcast without asking, who is a woman of inspiration to you, Jennifer? Who is that woman that you look up to?
It changes over time. There's so many. Right now, Holly Fortier is my favorite. She is my Indigenous mentor. I learned a lot from her. I'd attended an Indigenous awareness and training session years ago, and she almost reminds me of like an older version of myself, my spiritual Indigenous mom. She's fantastic. She has such a great story. Her and her family survived so much, and she comes from when she speaks, she comes from a place of she's not speaking from an angry place. She speaks from a place of forgiveness, no matter how bad things were. And sometimes when you talk about, the women being suppressed, or Indigenous, or genocides, or, we're talking a lot about anti-Black racism these days, etc. Sometimes speakers are still angry, and you can hear it when they're speaking. And this woman just blew my mind, because if you heard her story and her mother's story, and all of the pain that went on, and the suffering, it's probably because of her Christian faith, but she really comes from a place of just wanting to share the truth and wanting to be focused on reconciliation. She has completely forgiven everyone and everything. And she just speaks from a place of peace. And it's really inspiring to see a woman who's gone through so much, especially in that kind of era with her family, and be able to take that position and not be angry at all.
Well, Holly, I hope you're listening, and I hope that fills your bucket today, because that's surely a testimonial that someone would love to hear. So Holly, if you're listening, we'd love to meet you. Sounds like an inspiring story. And, you know, I would just like to thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today on the Woman of Inspiration podcast, and being a part of this journey. You're an incredible leader. You've got a spectacular story. You are just blazing trails and so motivated. We're just really proud to have you part of the network and part of these great leadership team of women driving change. So is there any last words that you would love to leave the listeners with today before we wrap up?
Yes, I kind of have a bullet point list these days of things like, you're never alone, so seek help. There's a lot of resources out there. Don't let anyone or anything steal your peace, or try not to. As soon as you start feeling like you're in a dark place, just know that there's always another way. We only have so much time, and so on this earth anyway, and so spend your time wisely. And I would say never, ever, ever give up. There are so many times where, you know, you just feel like, oh, I'm not worth it, or I'm just gonna, you know, give up. And that's what some of my mentors have said to me over time, and they used to drill it in my head, and it's still there today. No matter how bad it is, tomorrow's another day, and it usually gets better. It gets better and better as the years go on. So just don't give up because you're in that one kind of crappy day or frame of mind that might be negative. It will change. The saying, this too shall pass, is so true, but it's true on both sides. It's true on the negative side and on the positive side. So the great experiences will pass, so you have to enjoy those, and so will the negative ones. Just learn from it and enjoy the ride.
Well, thank you so much. I know that in our questions, we had you describe 3 words that best represented your passion and you know, who you are. And those words were resilient, ambitious, and nurturing. And I'm going to add fearless to that as well. That would be my bonus word for you. I have to say that, you know, I'm super happy that we had this chance to talk, and really excited for you in your, you know, new family and your new chapter of your life that you're forming. I look forward to September for so many reasons, but one is we have a baby member to welcome as well. That's going to be super exciting. So thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. And for those listeners that are watching, how can they get in contact with you? I know that we play this on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, but is there other ways that people can get a hold of you to learn more about Staff Shop?
For sure. So on the Staff Shop side of things, it's probably easiest if you just email info@staffshop.ca. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Jennifer Ménard-Shand, on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, those are the key places.
And if they're on the roadways across North America, they can see on the graphic trucks as we prepare for the 2021 roadshow. So if you see Jennifer on those roadshow trucks, honk twice and say we support her.
Thanks. I must say my face has never been in a transport, so that's amazing.
What a great experience. And you know what? We look forward to the tour that's coming just up in the fall, and really just driving change for women from diverse industries all across Canada. So thank you again, Jennifer. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thanks, Monica.